Mary, you should have it. Thank you, ma'am.
Good afternoon. This is the April 2022 Town Hall for reducing operational costs with high performance school buildings. My name is Mary DuBois. I am here with my co-chair for the League of Women Voters of Florida Clean Energy Committee. We host these town halls every month, and they're open to anyone who's interested in the topic. We are reaching out to school districts around the state to give them the opportunity to hear Marc Clinch, who is also an employee of a school district, this one, in this case, Osceola County. The good news is Marc is not a consultant wanting to sell something, but he does want to share a wonderful story about how energy efficiency strategies can be a boon to the budgets for very strapped school districts around the state, and good news for the environment at the same time. So I'm going to turn this over to Marc Clinch.
Okay, well, thank you, Mary, and good afternoon, all. So we do these town halls on a monthly basis, and we've been doing them for a little over a year now, and have slowly been making our way around the state virtually. I believe we now have north of 20 school districts that we have connected with, as well as several other government agencies. So first, I want to thank the League of Women Voters for hosting today's town hall. And I'm going to start with my typical disclaimer. As Mary mentioned, I am not a salesman. I am not trying to sell you anything, but I do want to share some golden nuggets of information that I hope that you can take back to the owners that you work with, school districts, government agencies. These concepts, high building performance criteria, does not apply just to schools. It applies to any commercial building. And in fact, this applies to to residential construction as well. Those concepts are a little bit different, but so high performance can be applied to any building. But today we're going to talk about my specific experience with school construction. So the building, the school that is pictured is Neo City Academy. It is the first zero energy school in the state of Florida. And what is particularly noteworthy about this school is that it started as a high performance building criteria. We did not initially on the onset commit to get this building all the way to zero energy, to net zero. We were actually able to do that and bring the building to a full, actually net positive, where it produces more power than what it consumes on an annual basis. But it started with high performance building criteria in that we took specific steps to drive down the energy use intensity and tighten the building and incorporate some other strategies that are how we get to high performance building criteria. So ultimately, this is about reducing energy intensity in a building, the energy usage, which equates to operational costs. So really comes down to the cost of ownership. You know, we look at construction projects as that initial first cost being the big elephant that we have to lift. But the bigger elephant is having to maintain and operate that building over the life of the building. So in schools, you know, that's typically 50 years. So it really starts with tightening the building envelope, and that's applying attention to detail. This is not impossible to do. We've been doing this project after project. I'm going to share several case studies with you today to show that this is not that hard to do, but it takes a different mindset and that attention to detail to tighten the building envelope, drive down the energy use intensity. So it takes designers and construction managers that have the right mindset coming into these projects. And if they do, they will be successful with these projects. We have been successful with all our projects thus far. We now have 3 under our belt. We have another 2 that we will be putting into construction this month, and we have another 4 that are in design. My presentation is stuck. There we go. So next slide. And the attention getter here is because school districts spend so much on energy. It is the highest cost, the highest operational cost, second only to salary. So it is a really big number. And also, likewise, a really big opportunity for school districts to find ways to reduce their energy costs so that they can shift those savings elsewhere where there's tremendous need. And there's always lots of need in school districts or any government agency to hire more teachers, more employees, to purchase more technology, more equipment. The list goes on, and there is never enough money for any government organization, whether a school district or a county, a city, a municipality, to have enough funds to go around. So what we'll talk about today is what is a high performance school building. And again, this applies to any commercial construction, these same concepts. The why, which is reducing the operational costs. This is, the big reason for us why we're doing this. There's lots of other positive environmental issues as well. Reducing our carbon footprint, passing a world onto our grandkids that is going to allow them to continue to have a good lifestyle. Many, many reasons why we do this. The social, the political, but the big one for us is the economical, and saving costs. In my case studies, I'm going to share some cost premiums and return on investment. Those ROIs have to work. No matter what it is that you may want to do, you have to get the ROI to work. And it really does work well for high performance because it is a minimal premium with a very quick return on investment. This is not a gold-plated standard. It's getting bare bones performance and focusing on performance so that we can get the best bang for our buck. I'm going to share a little bit of terminology, and I'm going to land with a better and more efficient way. And we will open it up to Q&A at the conclusion of the presentation. So on average, high performance schools save 65 to 80%, 65 to 80% less energy than a building constructed to traditional standards. And here we have 2 prototypes. The first prototype, completed in 2017, was built to traditional standards. And the next time that same prototype was built on the same campus, nearly side by side, we took that same prototype, we tweaked it, we fine-tuned it, and we incorporated high performance so that we really gave us a great side-by-side comparison. And I can tell you, ladies and gentlemen, our high performance completed in 2020, which is the Osceola Business Academy, has been performing extremely well, saving us significant annual operating costs, and has been the focus of several awards in the Central Florida community. Energy use in the United States. The reason why it is so important to talk about buildings, and at the start of our call, before we officially started the call today, we talked about the National Building Performance Standard Coalition, and that now there is a focus for buildings, just like cars, and we can rate their miles per gallon. We need to come to a standard for buildings as well, so that we can set performance metrics for buildings. So high performance does that for us because we're really trying to focus in on driving down the energy use intensity and tightening the building envelope. So this first case study is Neo City Academy. And this is just for the high performance component. This is before installing any solar on the school. So the premium to get it to high performance was 5.2%, and the ROI less than 5 years. Ladies and gentlemen, I've been involved in several life cycle cost studies. I'm sure that you have been as well, our designers in the audience today. And any time that we can get to something that's 5 years or less, you know, for at least the school industry, where again, we're going to have schools around for 50 years. Anytime that we can get to 5 years or less, that is what we consider a no-brainer. It's something that we do. It just makes perfect sense to do it. So again, minimal premiums, quick return on investment. And this was one of our first projects. So as you will see the case studies progress, those ROIs continue to go down. You know, I think in the first high performance that we did, in those bids, there was a little bit of a fear factor, but now our contractors are seeing where, you know, they can do this reasonably and achieve these standards without a lot of additional cost or effort and still maintain the schedules. Neo City Academy was a very aggressive schedule. We were able to incorporate high performance and get to, you know, this very low ROI. So now, same school, when we add the solar component, you can see that premium bumps up a little bit to 9.1%, less than 8 years. This still is not too bad. You know, again, the focus of today's presentation, I am not advocating for solar. What I am really trying to message to you is that high performance is really where the meat is in the savings for these types of products. Now, if you can get that EUI really low and that little remaining EUI, you can add a solar component so that you can address the remaining energy use and get that building to net zero, that's great. But again, the focus of today's presentation is driving to high performance so that we can see the meat, you know, the big savings is with the high performance alone. And this next slide illustrates that. As you can see, 77% of our savings is in the high performance component alone. And the remaining 23% is from the solar. So, you know, if this is a sandwich, high performance is the meat in that sandwich. It is where we get the majority of our savings. And this is why this slide illustrates why all our new construction moving forward, we are setting to a high performance building criteria, because it just makes sense to get this significant savings with a minimal additional investment. Really is a no-brainer. And this school complies with all the SREF requirements, cost per student station. In addition, you know, when we tightened the building envelope, we were able to take 27.5 tons of chiller capacity out of this project. And as you can see, the square footage is, here's my square footage. The square footage is a little under 45,000 square feet. This is not a really big building. To be able to reduce the HVAC tonnage by 27.5 tons, that equates to about 70,000 in first cost savings that we were able to redirect elsewhere into the project to do good things for the building, like improving indoor air quality with a DOAS, a dedicated outdoor air system, CO2 controlling and monitoring. When you tighten a building and you get to the Yeti cooler standard of buildings, it is amazing the reductions that you can see in your HVAC tonnage. On our air leakage for this project, it was a 0.027. It was 82% better than the criteria we set. So it just goes to show when contractors, subcontractors, especially the envelope subcontractors, when they're really paying attention to the details, how the building is being joined and getting that as tight as possible, it really is amazing how tight you can get that building envelope and you know, realize even more energy savings in your project. So the next case study is the Osceola Business Academy. As you can see, premiums are going down. This was a 1% ROI, 5.3 years. not too bad. You know, and again, this is not a very big building, a little less than 27,000 square feet. The estimated savings was 14,000. Our actual savings, and this is, you know, monitoring our 12-month run data, and also having that existing building that was built in 2017 to traditional standards to compare it. We were able to confirm that our 12-month actual savings, annual savings, is $17,400. Not too bad for a building of this size. So, and this is annual savings. This is year after year after year. We're going to save this, you know, 17,000, and you know, funds that we can redirect elsewhere into our operating costs to do other things in our school district. The previous project, 115,000 a year annual savings. So, and that again was the full-blown net zero energy. So the next case study is Canoe Creek Cave. This is our last project that we completed just last summer. Premium was 1.5%, and the ROI, 3 years. It actually rounded to 3 years. The estimated savings, 75,000. Our actual savings, again, monitoring our 12-month run data. At this point, it looks like we're a couple months short, but at current, we're tracking at 86,000 a year in annual savings. So let me break this down a little bit for you. In this particular prototype, we were able to tighten the envelope, and that cost us about 42,000 furnished and installed, with the additional sealants, you know, Harry Blue Seal, and the things that we do to tighten building envelopes. $42,000 additional cost. That was the premium, you know, plus some testing. We test all our projects to confirm that they're meeting the air leakage criteria that we set. But by doing this, and this is before we actually tested out, based on the criteria that we set, the air leakage criteria of 0.20, we were able to reduce 84 tons. We were able to take 84 tons of chiller capacity out of this project. So that's a estimated savings of $210,000 as compared against that 42,000 cost to tighten the envelope, and net savings of 168,000 that we were able to redirect elsewhere into the project to do the DOAS, the dedicated outdoor air system, the CO2 controlling and monitoring. The air leakage, our test rate, our infiltration rate was 0.037 on this project. It was 70% better than what it needed to be. So, you know, contractors, construction managers that may be a little bit fearful about high performance, it just goes to show with the 3 case studies that I've shared that with a little bit of attention to detail, you can substantially improve on the criteria set for these projects. But irregardless, you know, this is something that is achievable. You know, in our first project that we did, we set a very tough criteria. We currently set 25 EUI, 0.20 CFM per square foot air leakage. But in that first project, we set a 20 EUI and a 0.15 cubic feet per minute per square foot. That was our first high performance. We did so because we really wanted to test the waters and you know, try this and see if it was really, you know, something that was, you know, had value for our school district. And, you know, as I mentioned, we exceeded that criteria by 82%. But going forward, when we incorporated the EUI and air leakage into our design standards, we loosened up on it just a little bit to that 25 EUI and that 0.20 CFM per square foot air leakage, because we recognized with that first project, we had a designer and a construction manager that had successfully completed projects like this. We now wanted to open it up to designers and construction managers that had little or no high performance experience and have the ability to be successful. And that has been our story. All our designers, construction managers that we have worked with on our high performance projects thus far have been very successful. When we get to our air leakage testing, it's a high five, and it's something that we do take seriously. We give it the attention that it deserves, so that when we do the final testing, we're going to hit our criteria. Now, another thing that we do, and I'll talk about this a little bit further in the presentation, is a mock-up. A mock-up is a non-negotiable for these types of projects. It is a fully built, smaller version of the building. It is not just like one tilt panel where we can see finishes. The mock-up that we're talking about is a full building, and that is constructed prior to the actual building, so that our envelope subcontractors can learn from it. They take those lessons learned, and then they can apply it to the actual building. Going to get into a little bit of terminology. High performance versus zero energy. I've been using those terms interchangeably, and I apologize if I may have confused you, but I just want to make it very clear. High performance is that building with that ultra low energy usage. There is no solar that has been applied to that building. But high performance zero energy projects have to start with high performance. You have to get to a very low EUI, tightening the building envelope, incorporating some other strategies so that you can first get the building to high performance, and then you're able to graduate that building to a zero energy. And that falls into two categories: either net zero energy, which means on an annual basis, your consumption equals your production. The two zero each other out. Whereas net positive, which is the case with our Neo City Academy, you're producing more power via your solar than you're consuming off of the grid. And there are many times where we are producing power in excess of our needs. Like right about this time of day, about 2:30, we're dumping a ton of power back onto the grid at this time. Our solar production is at maximum capacity at this time of day. And we're actually, some days, we're producing as much as 4 times what we're consuming at this time of the day. All that power is going back on the grid in the form of a credit. And then there are times where we're not producing enough of our power, an evening where we may have a parent event in the school, so that power is being pulled off of the grid. But schools are a great candidate for zero energy projects because they have those large windows of PV generation. Weekends, holiday break, summer break, where there's not lots of demand in the building. So all that excess power that's being generated is going back onto the grid. But again, the purpose of today's presentation is not about solar. If we can get a building to high performance alone, keep in mind that that is the majority of our savings with this approach. Some other components, and this is not all inclusive, but these are some of the components that are included in the high performance. We talked about tightening the building envelope. Energy modeling, very important for the design firm on the front end to model different scenarios, orientations of that building on the site to see what's going to produce the best energy model. We do this with all our projects. As an example, we did this at Neo City Academy. We had an energy model that would have got us down to 13 EUI. However, that orientation was a compromise to what we were trying to achieve. So we went with another energy model that actually produced a 22 EUI. And through the course of design and construction, we were able to further lower that EUI. We ended up with a 16. So thermal massing, using those spaces in your building to mass where you're going to get your greatest solar heat gain coefficient. Right sizing the mechanical system, windows and doors, cool reflective roofing, LED lighting. These are things that all of you know about, and you're probably already incorporating into your project. So good on you. These are all things that contribute to a high performance building criteria. And in many of your designs, you may see it's just a matter of taking a few additional steps to really get those synergistic opportunities to drive down your EUI substantially. So again, the difference between high performance and zero energy is with the zero energy, now we're adding a renewable source here in the Southeast. That's typical photovoltaic panels. So it is that final push to address that remaining EUI. High performance, getting the EUI really low, and then zero energy, adding that renewable component to address the remaining and close that gap. Ladies and gentlemen, here is the secret sauce of the presentation. If you forget any other slide that we talked about today, please do remember this one. This is how we tighten a building envelope. This is a typical tilt panel connection, concrete tilt panels. And this shows that what is circled in red is what we have always done, where we have done a backer rod and a caulk joint. And ladies and gentlemen, I can't tell you how many times I've walked completed school projects 2, 3 years after completion, and I see where that caulk joint is separating, it's failing. That building is leaking. So with high performance, we do redundant belt and suspender approach, where we apply additional components, and these are very low cost, low tech, to getting that building tightened, to get to that Yeti cooler aspect of a building. And the pictorial that you see to the side of the screen, that shows the step-by-step from the contractor's QC plan. So, Ajax out in the audience today, this is something that you may consider for your project, where, especially with your envelope subcontractors that are coming on the job every day, they may not be the same personnel from day to day. So getting them quickly oriented on what the objectives of that project are, so that they can see, for example, before that they move to step 5, this is what step 4 needs to look like. That primer needs to be applied to both sides of the joint before the hairy blue seal is applied to that joint. And in our QC manuals, we do this for every envelope component. We do this for the floor to wall connection, the wall connections, as you see here, the wall to roof connection, windows and doors, anywhere that we have penetrations, whether that be conduit, electrical conduit, mechanical penetrations, so that we can get that building as tight as possible and guide those envelope subcontractors through that process to get them to really understand the objectives of high performance. And once they are exposed to this, they really see that this isn't that hard to do. It really is not that hard. It's just a different mindset, a little bit of attention to detail. So in addition to driving down our energy use, we are also looking to do things to improve student performance, human performance in our buildings. As I mentioned, one of those is a DOAS. So as compared to your typical HVAC systems that recycle inside air, bring in a little outside air, a DOAS brings in 100% outside air, it scrubs it, it tempers it, and supplies it throughout the building. It is, from the ASHRAE Epidemic Task Force, this was found to be the #1 thing that owners can do to improve indoor air quality. And, granted, we were doing this before COVID. So it is a proven methodology. This is off-the-shelf technology. This is not an untried technology, and it works. It's amazing, and it works. Another thing that we do is CO2 controlling and monitoring. There's a Harvard study where they subjected pilots to large amounts of CO2. It negatively affected their cognitive function, their ability to think clearly. Those pilots could not perform basic maneuvers. So why would we do that in a school environment where we're trying to get the best performance out of our students? So the reason why we're controlling our CO2 and we control it to between 700 and 1,000 parts per million. But these are all things that you can fund by those first cost savings by right sizing your mechanical system. You know, another thing that we do to improve performance in our schools, again, something that designers in the audience today have been doing, is the natural daylighting. Again, another Harvard study that concludes lots of good reasons for natural daylighting. It improves productivity. It makes people feel better. It allows people to look outside the building and connect with the outside environment. One of the tricks that we did in Neo City Academy is we installed those translucent panels. Those are right above the canopy. So what that does, and this is our south elevation, it allows natural daylight to come in without a lot of the residual solar heat gain coefficient. So a little trick, and you know, really what we want to do with our daylighting is we want to flush that natural daylight through that building structure as deep as we possibly can. And that will help with your lighting energy load as well. So what is EUI? Energy use intensity. This is everything that a building consumes in power divided by square footage. That's it. And this is information that you can easily get from your energy manager. You know, it's to say, hey, you know, I have 10 buildings on this campus. Give me the EUI by building. I want to see how these buildings are doing. So this is very easy information to get. The energy usage divided by the square footage gets you to a number. The lower the EUI, the better. Just like a golf score, a lower number is better. So comparable EUIs, the national is 68. Our school district, before we deployed our high performance program, was very high at 65. We're slowly bringing that down. And this was a charge in our school district from our school board members down, that they wanted to find a way to reduce our energy costs. And so, you know, that was a big driver for high performance. Here in the state of Florida, the average is about 55. Neo City Academy, 16. And the criteria that we had set for that, again, at that time was 20. So we were well below that 20. Osceola Business Academy, a 22. And the criteria we set was 25. We actually haven't updated this slide yet, but Canoe Creek, that 25 was the criteria we set. We are currently looking at finalizing that, and it looks like it's going to be about a 23.5. So again, in all cases with our EUIs, our air leakage, we have been able to get below the criteria we set. So it's really not that hard to hit this criteria, but yet, if you get a building to a 25 EUI or less, and you tighten that building, you're going to see vastly, you know, significantly improved reduced energy consumption and associated costs. And energy costs aren't going down anytime soon. You know, they're going to continue to increase. And, you know, what's going on in the world is going to further fuel, you know, those increased energy costs. So, you know, this is something that we need to be smart about. We need to look ahead. And honestly, ladies and gentlemen, as the energy code continues to get tougher, I really see high performance being the standard that is set. So for those of us that are taking the initiative to learn as much as we can about this now, we're going to be really well positioned when those energy costs code changes toughen. And we have to do this because we'll already have been doing it. We'll be very well educated with it. So again, you know, it's about minimizing air leakage, right sizing the mechanical system. You know, when you tighten that building, you can right size the mechanical system to ultimately reduce the energy footprint. Because when it comes down to it, a major portion of the building's energy loss is through air leakage. It is the voice of your father telling you to shut the door. He's not paying to cool the outside. But this is what we do every day in our traditional buildings. You know, and I'm not saying that the way that we built in the past was incorrect. No, I mean, we've we've all transitioned and followed the industry, and we continue to improve. This is the next thing. High performance is how we can continue to improve the built environment. And it's not that hard to do. However, it takes a different way of thinking. How many times I've heard through this process, why are we doing it this way? Well, because we've always done it this way. I've been a mechanical subcontractor for 50 years, and I've always done it this way. How many times we've heard that? And to continue to do things the same way and expect different results is the definition of insanity. There is a better way to do this, but we have to, shift the way that we think, the thought process, and getting others that have been in the industry for many, many years, including me. I have some gray hair. I've been around for a while, but I am not opposed to finding ways, and I'm sure that none of you are, to finding ways to do this better. We can do this better. This is my brag slide, awards and recognition. Neo City Academy, 19, published 19 times in most every trade publication, 11 prestigious awards. We have now our awards that are coming in on our other high performance projects. To me, this really is not what sets the mark in determining our success. It's really, seeing that the industry recognizes that we are doing a better job with our built environment. And, that's what this is really about. All of you work for owners. I work for an owner. We are trying to provide the best value that we possibly can to our owners so that we can improve the built environment. That's what this is really about. So what about renovations? I've often been asked, what's the premiums for renovations? Well, the simple answer is it depends. There are different variables with renovations. It depends on the extent of the renovation, whether it's extensive, you're gutting the entire building, you're exposing the building joints and you have an opportunity to tighten it, or a light renovation where maybe you're just replacing the HVAC and the lighting. You're pulling out the ceilings, and in doing so, you're adding, incorporating more efficient HVAC and LED lighting. Whatever the extent of a renovation, you have opportunities to incorporate high performance strategies. It really starts with benchmarking. As I said earlier, looking at all those existing buildings and seeing what the EUI is doing. We have a comprehensive renovation high school project, 19 buildings on that campus. We're going to demolish 7 of them. So we have to retain the balance. And we looked at all those existing buildings before we made our plans for renovations to see what the EUIs were doing. And one building right in the center of the campus had an 89 EUI. And we were like, what is going on? Because all the other buildings around it were, 55, 60. So we dug in a little deeper. We did an air leakage test, very inexpensive test. And what we found is that the culprit was older single pane windows. So what we're doing on that particular building renovation is we're backing off just a little bit on the interior build out, and we're taking that money to install new windows. That simple act will get us down from an 89 EUI to about a 35, significant annual savings. And the interior build out, you really won't notice the difference. It will still, substantially have all the same components that we had originally planned. But that's where it starts, is with the benchmarking, so that you can tell those dollars where to go in that renovation so that you can get the best bang for your buck. I'm also a believer of commissioning and retro commissioning. The commissioning on new buildings, it's the verification of the owner's project requirements. Just because you have a design and you have a mechanical contractor doesn't mean you're necessarily going to get that intent. You have to trust but verify, and we do that through commissioning. So it's really, in commissioning, I don't look at it as an additional project cost. I really look at it as an investment. because we always find that the things that we find through the commissioning process are well worth the dollars that we spent for the commissioning. And, to ensure that we're getting that ROI that we should be. Retro commissioning, primarily for existing buildings, just because, that building is 7-9 years old, doesn't mean that equipment is going to be operating at the same levels of efficiency that it was day one. Just like a car, you go out and buy a car off the lot. Day one, it's getting great MPG, but over time, you have to take that car in for a tune-up. And that's what retro commissioning is. It's tune-ups for existing buildings so that we can get things back into sync, working and operating efficiently. Other considerations, I tell owners, select a design professional with a successful high-performance track record. But if a design professional shows the aptitude and the mindset to be successful with these types of projects, I will hire them in an instance. And we've done that, and we've been successful. So really, this starts with having the right mindset. Design professionals that come in and tell you, well, Mr. Owner, that's going to cost you another $2.7 million. You're talking to the wrong designer. They have not shifted that paradigm to this. And when they do, it is just a marvelous transformation to see designers get this, that they see that they can improve the product that they're providing to owners. And this is well within their reach to be successful. Another thing that is very helpful is for the owner to identify an internal champion. For that first project, that was me. I now have a department full of champions, of Rocky Balboas, that will talk to you about high performance all day long, and they just love it, and they love the positive effects that this is creating. But weigh all the benefits. Don't look at just the minimal cost premiums, the quick ROI, the reduced operational costs. Better performing buildings. Who doesn't want that? Buildings that are easier to maintain. Using the building as a teaching tool. A healthier building, especially as we're coming out of COVID. Healthier buildings are certainly very important. And finally, high performance can pave the way to zero energy projects. If that's something that owners wish to do to address that remaining EUI, but again, getting to high performance alone, that is the meat, the majority of the savings. A call to action. So we're going to conclude today with highlighting a few possible objectives that you may employ with your owners. For the school district or the government agency to commit to a pilot project. Try one out, see how it fits. Identify that district champion, someone that can oversee it to make sure that it doesn't get off track. Because I guarantee if a school board decides to do one of these projects, in that very first design coordination meeting, the stakeholders are going to come in and they're going to say, this is different from what we've done before. This is just too confusing. Let's just keep doing what we've always done. To have that champion in the room to say, no, we're doing this, and to hold everyone true to those objectives. And that pilot could be a prototype. I mean, these are designs that exist, very easy to fine tune and tweak those designs. It's what we've been doing, though I would suggest that when you tighten that building envelope of that prototype, that you're also looking at the mechanical system. I mean, because that's really the benefit. You're tightening that building envelope so that you can reduce the size of your HVAC and then have those first cost savings to use elsewhere in the project. That's the benefit. And furthermore, if you tighten a building and you don't do anything to the mechanical system, we have some mechanical engineers in the audience today. I think they're going to agree with me that mechanical system probably isn't going to cycle correctly. So, very important that when you tighten a building, that you right-size the mechanical system too. The criteria that we've set in our RFQs is an EUI of 25 or less an air leakage maximum of 0.20. This is very achievable. This is very attainable. We're doing it project after project. We're getting well below this criteria. So, if you can get to less than 25, tighter than 0.20, wonderful. That is further going to contribute to your operational cost savings. And then, have an envelope commissioning agent to confirm. So the way we do this is we add a small supplement to our HVAC commissioning for envelope commissioning so that we can do a air leakage, a blower door test for our mock-up and the actual building. Not a lot of additional costs. And then for the government agency or the school district to evaluate this against the criteria that they have in place today. The champion to report back, and for the leadership of that organization to decide if expansion is warranted to continue with high performance. I can tell you, in our case with our school district, we found this to be a no-brainer again. We're doing this on all our new construction. There are half a dozen school districts in the state of Florida that are now following our lead. They recognize this as well. This trend is continuing to grow. And quite honestly, I see this being the standard as the energy code continues to get tougher. With that, I'm going to open it up for questions. If there's any questions from the audience, I'm happy to answer your questions.
Or could you close the presentation and then we
Yes.
can open up?
Mark, this is Cranston. I appreciate the insight. One of the things that I did not have in my design or what I've seen lately is your the tilt wall sealant that you showed with the hydrophobic sealant.
Right.
Could you share that slide with me so I can pass that on to our design team?
Happy to, absolutely.
That's one question. And then the second question is, in your premium cost, did you include any, I guess the envelope consultant or commissioning agent, any cost for additional insulation, window changes or anything like that?
Yes. In our premium costs, our overall project premium costs, we include the construction premium, which is the tightening the envelope. We also include the additional air leakage testing, the blower door test, and we also include like if there's a small supplement in the design, like in the case of a prototype, the designer, for a custom project, they have to design the mechanical system anyway. But for a prototype, you previously bought the prototype, that prototype reuse fee. So sometimes there is a small design premium to right size that mechanical system now that it's a high performance prototype. So, but yes, to answer your question, Cranston, all of those costs is included in our overall premiums.
And then when you did the Neo City side by side, did you guys use the same windows as the first building, the first prototype, or was it upgraded?
Side was the Osceola Business Academy.
Oh, I'm sorry, yeah.
That's a great question. Same windows, same exact stuff, just a different application.
Gotcha. All right.
Good question. I love your question. But a typical question I get is, what's the hardest part of doing this? And, with getting everybody on board. And, for me, I was very fortunate. I had a school district that was very, interested in doing these strategies. Our strategic plan, we have a pillar called fiscal responsibility, and that's where our energy reduction fall under. So our school district was very focused on finding a way to get better in that area.
Mark, this is Tony. I'm familiar with your products and we have worked together many years, but for others, can you share what is the average cost now is going to be per square feet so others can get some ideas for their own budgeting in future?
Tony, that's a real wild card with the escalation that we're seeing. But I can tell you on my previous, when I looked at that, like for Neo City, Osceola Business Academy, Canoe Creek, it looked like that was running $8 to $12 more per square foot as a benchmark, a rough benchmark. But, you know, with the escalation we're seeing now, it is really hard to, it wouldn't be apples to apples if I tell you, you know, a square foot cost, but it's about $8 to $12 more per square foot.
That's reasonable.
You
Yeah.
know, that's kind of on the high end. That was with some of our earlier projects where we still had what I call the fear factor was built into the bids. Subcontractors were bidding this job that had a high performance criteria. They really didn't understand it. They were a little concerned about it. In fact, that first project, you know, we had our electrical and mechanical contractors, you know, our low bidders, we had heard that they were very apprehensive about moving forward with this high performance project. So to be proactive, we had individual meetings with each. And the one with the mechanical contractor was quite humorous. You know, the meeting started, as you might imagine, the mechanical contractor laid the plans on the table and said, you know, this is different how we've always done things. Yes, sir. So let us walk you through. We have the mechanical engineer here. Mechanical engineer walked the mechanical contractor through the design. And actually the mechanical contractor recognized that there was a lot of simplification in the design. Instead of the big massive, you know, air handling units and such, that those were, you know, being sized smaller and, you know, simplifying the system. And, you know, we got to the end of that meeting and that the mechanical contractor's response was like, that's it. That's all I have to know. And yes, sir. And, you know, we're going to pull you through this project and make sure you're successful.
What about the paybacks? Can you also share on that one? What was the payback for that extra investment and how long it took you?
Yeah, so, you know, I equated to the ROIs and, you know, like Neo City Academy, just a high performance, ROI was 4.5 years. So our payback was at that 4.5 year. The Canoe Creek, you know, our payback 3 years. And those are continuing to improve as we continue to do more of these projects. You know, as you might imagine, we're getting a lot of similar subcontractors that are doing the projects. There's, you know, some variation, different, you know, mechanical contractors and such, but we're actually overall, we're seeing that payback improve.
That's awesome.
It is. And, you know, again, this is not a gold-plated standard. You know, when I first became interested in this, Tony, you remember me presenting to the board at Orange County Public Schools. It was 2012. I had read a couple of case studies. One was Lady Bird Johnson Middle School in Irvine, Texas. The other was Sandy Grove Middle School in Hope County, North Carolina. And what I saw with those case studies is those premiums were 27 to like 40%. However, there was a lot of gold-plated standards that was being added to those projects. There were a lot of other things that they were doing. They really wanted those projects to be a staple. And I thought, you know, if I ever take this back to my boss and suggest we're going to spend another 40% on a project, he's going to tell me to pack my office and leave immediately. So I knew that that wouldn't go over well, but I thought there had to be a way to do this with minimal premiums. And there is. That's what we've proven. And that's what we're doing project after project. You know, as I mentioned, we've got 2 more high performance that are getting ready to go into construction this month. A comprehensive renovation of the high school with, you know, it's going to have 4 new buildings included in it and a new elementary school. And we now have, you know, a couple of caves and we'll soon have a couple of transportation facilities in design. They will all be high performance. And in fact, we're also doing on those projects, we're going to do high performance, zero energy ready, which means we're going to incorporate the empty conduit from the roof to the electrical room. So that at a later date, if a partner comes along, or if there are some other incentives to add the solar, then we'll be able to do that as a plug and play versus having to drill holes in our nice tight building envelope, because we don't know what incentives are going to come. You know, we were talking about the Building Standards Coalition. I think that is going to drive some incentives. So there's been a House bill that has been floated 2 times now for solar in schools. Harding and who's the other senator? I'm sorry, I don't recall. Lori Berriman.
Right.
Those have gone 2 times. The first time it failed by a pretty high percentage. I think it failed by 70. The last time it was in the 50s. So it's getting close. It was really close to passing last time. And I think eventually those types of incentives are going to pass through the Florida Senate. And, you know, I think the federal incentives are going to come back. And we may see a point in time where we are properly incentivized to do solar. You know, and a large part of that too is, you know, what you can negotiate for a net metering rate with your power utilities. There are some House bills and Senate bills that are being proposed to, you know, set limits or to improve that net metering. So my point is we don't know what the future holds, but if we can make our buildings future ready, if those incentives come along, then that puts us in a really good place. And to add that conduit as part of a multi-million-dollar project, you won't even see a blip on the radar screen. I think you'll agree with me. Conduit, empty conduit is cheap.
Marc,
That's right.
Marc, that brings up actually EV readiness of buildings. And I don't know if your school district or you hear of other school districts planning for, you know, making their facilities EV ready.
Yes, and that's really easy to do. Just like the zero energy ready for the buildings, doing the EV ready, running an empty conduit from the electrical room out to the parking lot, where you may at some time in the future have EV charging stations. It's as simple as that. Just adding an empty conduit so that at a later date, you're not having to rip up all that area development, that pavement, that concrete to get that conduit out to the parking lot. And we're going to do that in our transportation facilities as well. We're going to do future EV ready for our buses if, you know, that technology is available at a you know, good ROI.
Right. Well, we are
Hey,
at
Mark.
the hour. Does anybody have any other questions?
Yeah, Mark, Louis Vargas with KPI Engineering. Quick question. What have you done from a kind of an educational perspective for existing and prospective contractors to get them over that fear factor as they're bidding to make sure that you still have a good group of contractors that are going to be bidding the projects as opposed to getting scared of the high performance piece?
So we have looked to our CMs primarily to provide that. And as part of their bid outreach events, they talk about high performance. This is going to be a high performance project, and let us tell you what that entails, so that you know, those envelope subcontractors have the opportunity following the outreach event to engage with that CM to learn more. That's how we've been handling it. You know, unfortunately, there isn't a lot of written educational content for high performance and commercial. There's a bunch for high performance and zero energy, but there isn't yet for commercial projects. And that's a real need that we have in the market. And if I ever get a little time, I'm going to write a book and try to address that.
And then one more question on the on the financing piece, you know, because there's always a differential, and granted it's a small percentage in the overall scheme of things. You know, 4.5-year payback is really nothing. So unless you're like under 5 years, you're really good from a financial perspective. However, you know, and essentially now with all the volatility in the market, have you looked at some other financing instruments? And I may have asked you this, maybe we didn't circle back, but the energy savings agreement that's just being redone a little bit here in the state. to specifically address public buildings looks like a good financial instrument. Have you guys looked into that at all?
Yes, we have. And we're continuing to look at those type of agreements. And, you know, we have to weigh that with what we're able to do in-house. So we do have a pretty strong energy department. They're trying to implement a lot of those energy savings plans. And, you know, what's nice about that is if you can do it in-house, you don't have to share the savings with the ESCO. But, you know, there are various mechanisms for ESCOs that really work well, you know, for these school districts, you know, smaller school districts that don't have a funding source. You know, we're very fortunate to have impact fees and sales tax to fund our construction program. But a lot of school, you know, smaller school districts in Florida don't have that. So that is a great avenue for those smaller school districts to, you know, get those chillers replaced with more energy efficient chillers, doing the relighting projects. Those ESCOs can be a really good mechanism depending on the circumstances.
Okay, I think we've done it for today. Thank you all for coming and being engaged and learning from Marc. We continue to learn every time I sit through this. There's always new information to be absorbed into my brain. My favorite slide is the one that you showed where the savings is attributable to over 75% from energy efficiency strategies and versus solar. Being a solar advocate, that was quite shocking to me, but I was really glad to learn about that. So Marc, we continue, we'll be back here May the 12th. So please come back, invite other folks to join us. Our quest is to reach out to all the school districts in Florida and share this good news. And Marc is always available to go in either in Zoom or even in person nowadays to have an internal discussion with a school district. So that is the goal. So
yeah, I'm available for any questions. That's my email address. Yep. And if there's a special group presentation that an owner would like to do, I'm happy to set that up as a separate virtual meeting with that group. A little bit of notice, I can probably even do it in person, but I'm here to help and offer any information that I can. I believe in high performance, and I really see the value, and I just want to share that information.
Thank you very much to all.